An investigation by the Washington Post has shown that not only has Donald Trump, as we've previously reported, used money that was given to his charitable organization to buy paintings of himself and sports memorabilia, but he might have also used money being transferred to that foundation to evade significant taxes in the past, which it turns out would be illegal. And so we've got a couple of cases that we're going to look at here. In the first case, Comedy Central made a $400,000 donation to the Trump Foundation in exchange for his appearance on a 2011 roast, which I would say is overpaying him.
Jesus,
in the second, contributions amounting to nearly $1.9 million came into the charity over time from a New York man named Richard Ebbers. Now, I looked into that, and it turns out that for a couple of years, I believe 2013 and 2014, almost all of the money given to the Trump Foundation came from that one gentleman. In 1 year, it was 96% of all of the money came to the foundation through that one person who was apparently doing those donations rather than actually paying for services and goods provided by Trump and Trump companies.
So let's pause there for a second, John, because those are two good points. When I first heard the story of Mr. Ebbers, it's like, why does he want to? Can't he just give to the his own charity or to another charity instead of funneling it through Donald Trump's foundation? It doesn't make any sense. Why is he so obsessed with showing what a good guy Donald Trump is and letting him, like almost money launder his charity money? And then when you realize, oh no, he's just paying Trump for services.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes more sense.
Yeah, and it's very easy to see when you look at the actual breakdown of the individual amounts that were given, because it wasn't just $1.9 million, it was many separate checks. And so I looked into it, and many of them are $423,000 and $254 or something like that. Like, they're not, here's $500,000. It's clearly money that lines up with a particular purchase at a particular time. Now, after this information was released by the Washington Post, the Trump campaign said that taxes were actually paid on the Comedy Central payment. The campaign refused to elaborate at all on how Ebbers' contributions were handled, however, and it should be noted that even in the former case where they talk about the Comedy Central payment, they provided no evidence that that had actually happened. Now, as long as Trump refuses to release his personal tax returns, none of what the campaign has said can be independently confirmed. Now, why are we talking about this? Why might this be illegal? Because you cannot simply say, if you would give me $400,000, I would have to pay some ridiculously high tax rate on it. Instead, simply give it to my foundation, and then I can do with it what I will later without paying taxes. That appears to be what is going on. You cannot actually do that. Normally what is done is that those transactions typically would be handled with the income would first be paid and reported to the person who provided the service, in this case Donald Trump or one of his corporations, and then he or she could separately cut the check for their foundation. So that's generally how it's done. Alternatively, what can be done is that the money is given directly to the foundation. However, it still needs to be claimed as income by the person or corporation who is being reimbursed. Now, they're implying that at least in some of the cases that's what was done, but we have no evidence of that. And in some cases, they're not even providing that loose defense of what actually happened. So it is entirely possible at this point that literally hundreds of thousands or perhaps millions of dollars of taxes were not paid by Donald Trump. He used his foundation, as he so often has, to personally enrich himself.
So I'm going to explain to you in a second why he's likely to get away with it. But first, understand the implications of this. Number one, if they can prove it, it's against the law. Ironically, from the guy who claims that he's a law and order candidate, right? It's a very clear tax evasion if you can prove it. So, and so he's a scam artist. That's all he's ever done. He plays the long con. He's, oh, I got a Trump foundation. I give lots and lots of money. The first stories we did about it, where it turns out that he gave more money through the Trump Foundation to his kids' schools so that his loser kids could get into those private schools that they couldn't get into on their own merits. And these are the guys who always complain about affirmative action. Like, but your loser kids couldn't get into those schools based on scores. So but he wouldn't personally pay those schools outside of the tuition. You know that you have to give more on top of tuition to get the loser kids in, right? And you get called out charity. But he's too much of a con artist to pay out of his own money, and he's too cheap, so he would pay it through his foundation. And he would brag about how he helped AIDS charities, and it turns out he gave less to AIDS charities and to veterans groups than he did to his kids' private schools. Oh, what a scumbag. Okay, that's point number one. Point number two is you don't run all these scams and try to save $10,000 here or $100,000 there if you have $10 billion, because that risk wouldn't be worth it. You're like, wait, I'm going to go to jail over saving $85,000. I got $10 billion. No, I'm not going to take that risk. You only do that if you need to just take a little bit at a time because you really don't have that much money. That's another reason why he's not releasing his tax returns. So, and so what is Donald Trump in the business of? He's not in the business of building buildings. Almost no one lets him build a building anymore because he almost always goes bankrupt. They won't loan him money to build buildings anymore. That's not what he's in the business of. What he's in the business of is brand name. Trump, 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 Trump. And so how does he get paid on the brand name? Well, Comedy Central says, well, Donald Trump, you're such a big name. In order to get you to attend our roast, we're going to give you $400,000.
I personally think it's more that he's extremely easy to insult. More than the size of his name, but
well, that's why Comedy Central wants
you want
him to
good
come.
targets. That's what you want.
Sure, of course.
And after all, they had Ann Coulter on recently. It's not because she has such a loyal following. It's because I almost said something really bad. It's very easy to insult her. I'll say that.
No, I know, but John, they're not going to get him to show up because other people are offering him $300,000 to show up or $350,000 because of his brand name. So you build up the brand name by constantly bragging about how rich you are, which isn't really true. And whatever little money you make, and believe me, for all of us, $400,000 is a ton of money, okay? But you make your money from that brand name that you falsely bragged about. That's why he doesn't want you to know that he's not actually a billionaire, because it would destroy his brand name, and then people wouldn't pay him $400,000 to show up. So that's part of his long con as well. Now, why is he going to get away with it? Because you have to show intent in this particular crime. You don't in every crime. It depends on what the statutes are, which... what jurisdiction you're in, but in this particular crime, you've got to show that not only did he cheat on his taxes through this charity, but he knew and he intended to cheat on his taxes. Now, do I think he did that? Absolutely. Every single part of this charity is a scam. Do you know how much Donald Trump has put into this charity, the Trump Foundation, since 2008? $0. He hasn't put a nickel into his own charity. That's because it's not about charity. It's about a con that he's running to try to avoid taxes, etc. Can you prove that in court enough to convict him? You're going to need some sort of smoking gun email or a witness to say, yeah, he told me, let's set up the charity to run this scam. So good luck. It's going to be really hard to do.
Instead, the likely defense that he will take is that the candidate who says that he should become president is because he would choose the right people and he knows how to manage people, is that instead he hired lawyers who were so incompetent that they didn't know that this was a clear violation of the law, and he had no clue what they were doing for literally years as they did all of this. That will probably be his defense.
So again,
a little bit ironically.
For all you Trump supporters, you have two options here in this story. One is, well, yeah, okay, that's a smart business move. You break the law and you try not to get caught.
Which was his defense at the debate. I'm being smart.
Yeah, and you set up a fake charity. Well, people think you're a good guy, but you're not, and you screw them, and you screw the American taxpayer. That's just smart. Okay, if you're in that camp, vote for Trump. That's definitely your candidate. You're going to love this guy, okay? The second option is, oh, you can't blame Trump for this. He's a fucking moron. Well, he doesn't know. What are the laws? I don't know the laws. My lawyers don't know the laws. I never hired a decent person in my life. I've never been incompetent in my life. Okay, all right, then you're saying, okay, I like the incompetent buffoon. One of those choices, have at it, Hoss. There's so much more Young Turks content if you're a member. Great shows like Aggressive Progressives, Old School, you'll get post games, all ad-free, plus the whole 2-hour show. I know what you're thinking.
This is huge.
And it kind of is. So come join us. tytnetwork.com/join.